memories. Okay, I'm not bashing them. I'm just saying, within the last couple of years, any of you gotten into reading? And by the way, I count audiobooks. So like any audiobook or reading people, yeah. Okay, so, I love books. This is gonna sound weird, but I don't like just solo books. Like I read them and they're cool, but I love stories. I love diving into a universe and like I want to know everything about this universe, this timeline, this story, whatever that was. I was super into Marvel for a little bit, and then Marvel sucks. So, but I grew up on Star Wars, loved all of that. I was the one that like I would watch the like really nerdy Star Wars shows where everyone's like, "That's dumb. That's a weird side plot." And I'm like, I know, but like when you watch the side plot show, and then like this one character is connected to this character who knew the main character who dies, it's amazing. And everyone's like, "That's not amazing." I'm like, no, you don't understand. Like, I love that. When I was in high school, I discovered Lord of the Rings. I dove into that universe. That was my second favorite universe to study and to like dwell in, if that makes any sense. I love Lord of the Rings. Very recently discovered Harry Potter. I grew up where you were not allowed to watch Harry Potter, say Harry Potter, say anything wizard, because the church for a while in like the 90s, and by the way, if you are against Harry Potter, I'm not bashing you, okay? But I grew up in a church that had anti-Harry Potter night and talked about how wizards are evil and witches are evil. I know. It wasn't the healthiest. We actually got kicked out of that church. That church had a lot of other problems going on. My family got kicked out of that church for something that my parents didn't do, but that's a different story for another day. So I grew up being like, Harry Potter's dumb, and I'm not allowed to watch it. And then in college, I was like, I thought I was a cool kid, so I was like, well, I'm not going to get into that wizard stuff. It's weird. Partly because there was a Harry Potter club at my school, and they would like run around. And this one kid one time ran up to me, and he like did a little, like put a wand in my face and said something. And he's like, I just put a curse on you. You don't even know what I did. And I was like, oh yeah? Well, flitty flabbity. And he like looked at me, and the kid was like, that's not a real thing. And I was like, or in my universe, you're now a pig. So, it was a dumb comeback, but I was like, a dumb action requires a dumb comeback. So, but I'm reading, Sarah and I are going through Harry Potter books right now. I've never read them. They're incredible. They're amazing. I'm also like listening to the books while I'm playing Hogwarts Legacy. So I'm about. And then Sarah, but hold up. When I got put in it, I got upset and then got angry. And Sarah goes, "Oh my gosh, you're acting like a Slytherin." And I was like, "Well, that's mean." So, but my favorite universe to dive in, my favorite fictional universe has created a couple of the worst movies ever made. Narnia. The Chronicles of Narnia is my favorite universe to dive into. Now, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe is an awesome movie. And I will fight you if you say the movie's not good, okay? Weren't you and I just like a couple weeks ago bonding about that movie, or was that someone else? Nope, awkward, not Riley. Anyway, but the next one's Prince Caspian's weird, Voyage of the Dawn Treader, awful. Anyway, the books. I read these books when I was 8 years old. Someone bought me the Chronicles of Narnia. They're not super big books, and I was like, Mom, I'm going to read these. But I was like, Mom, is it okay if I read these instead of the Bible? And I was like, wait, are you saying just reading the Bible is not normal? She was, yes. I was like, oh, that's sad. So I open up and I'm reading these books, and they're awesome. It's battle and death and chaos and a lion. It's amazing. By the way, no one bashes Chronicles of Narnia, the main villain, a witch. Awkward. But I thought those were bad. Anyway, so, I'm reading these books. There's 7 of them, and I read in order. I read exactly in order. So when they made, the first movie they made was the second book, I was super mad. So I was There's a lot of heavy spiritual undertones and all this stuff. But I read through the books and it was great. And then in college, I reread them. And I was super stressed. I was so sick of reading these books that I didn't know what they were saying. Have you guys ever read a page? Like, you fully read the page, and then you look at the page and you go, I have no idea what that just said. Yeah? So you read it again, and then you go, I'm actually more lost now than I was the first time. You ever done that? So I was having one of those days, and and you guys know, you guys do this. You stay up super late, then you don't function well in the morning, and you sleep past your alarm, and then you're not eating healthy, but you're like, I don't know why my brain isn't working. So I also had not drinking, I not had a sip of water in like 9 years. So, we all do this. So I'm like, I'm going to go back and reread these books. I want to read something fun. So I'm like, I'm going to pick up the 5th book. I've read all of these. This is one of my favorites. I'm going to read it. And I'm reading this book. And at this time in my life, I've been going through a pretty big struggle. This is right after I got out of that super, super abusive relationship I told you guys about. So I'm reading this book, and there's this kid named Eustace. Eustace is the worst. If you've read this book, this kid sucks so bad. Like, awful, okay? Hate this kid. Seriously, I'm reading the book, and I'm just trashing on this kid. And he's the annoying... Okay, if you were a middle schooler last year, just know that we don't think of you this way now. But at one point we did. This is the annoying 7th grade kid. Okay? The kid that asks so many questions. Okay? The kid that has just the right nasal and high-pitched balance that when he speaks, it like hits you in the head and you're like, why are you alive? So, that's Eustace, okay? So, and the book kind of sets it up. Like, C.S. Lewis kind of makes this guy the butt of every joke. So you're reading this book, and they land on this island, and Eustace is walking around, and I'm summarizing very quickly. But Eustace finds all this gold. And Eustace is like, oh, snap! Gold! That's kind of what he says. He's dumb. And he, like, starts collecting this gold, and he turns into a dragon. But, like, he can't control it. Hold up. Just if you let me keep going, okay? Listen. So he turns into a dragon. And again, I'm summarizing. There's a lot that led up to this. It's not like the book goes, Eustace finds gold, boom, dragon. Okay, there's a lot. You should read these books. They're incredible. But there's a character named Aslan. Aslan represents Jesus. And there's this part that wrecked me so much when I was reading this book, I had to put the book down and stop reading it. I'm reading this book, and Eustace the dragon approaches Aslan and is like freaking out. And is like, look what I've become. I'm trying to fix myself and I can't. I'm trying to change and I can't. Like, I'm this dragon. And Eustace said, I keep like scratching to like rip this dragon skin off of me and it's not working. And Aslan says, I can change you back, but I have to be the one to do it. But you need to know this is going to hurt. This is going to be really uncomfortable, and this is not going to feel good. And then the book describes Aslan, like this huge lion, literally ripping the dragon scales off of Eustace and scratching, and it's painful, and Eustace is screaming out in pain. And then Eustace goes back to being a boy. And there's this insane moment between Aslan and Eustace where everything starts to click in his brain. So I read that, and I was in this really, really bad spot in my life. And I'm in my room, and my roommate's over there. And my roommate he's the weird guitar guy. I love him. Okay, but if you went to the camp 4 years ago, you know the guitar guy that I'm talking about that walked around with a guitar, and he would that was his line. His pickup line was, I have a guitar. Like, he would literally walk up to girls, sit down, and just go. He is jealous for me. And you're like, dog, worship? But no, it's not. Every girl on YouTube is like, nah, I'm good. So it was creepy. That was my roommate. So I'm reading this book. My roommate's over on his bed, and my roommate was super into like sad songs that did not apply to him. You know when you're in that mood, you're like, I'm just gonna put on the most emotional song I can think of. Right now, it's just like anything by Louis Capaldi. But he's sitting there and he's just playing sad songs, and he's like, she left me all alone, and I'm like, you've never had a girlfriend? Like, you're a dork. Like, so he's over there in his bed, and I'm sitting reading this book, and I get to that part, and Eustace goes, or Aslan goes, if you want to change, I have to be the one to do it. I have to be the one to rip the scales off of you. It has to be me. And this is going to hurt. And I take the book, and I slam it down, and I look up at him, and I yell, stop playing sad love songs. To which he pauses, and he looks at me and goes, you good, bro? And I wasn't. Fast forward a year. My grandfather's dying. He had been put on hospice. So this is my senior year of college. I had been offered to come to Horizon and intern in the youth department, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to do it. I was like, why would I say yes to a lot of work and not getting paid? My two interns in the back were like, hallelujah, why would I say yes to that? Why did I say yes to that? So I'm not sure, and I'm really questioning the call of God on my life at this point. I knew I had it, but I felt really confused because I was like, God, I don't want to just be a youth pastor. Like, parents are just going to drop off their middle schoolers and high schoolers who they don't like and they don't get and expect me to fix everything. By the way, that's not a shot at your parents, but let's call it a spade a spade. So I was like, I don't want to do that, but I don't want to work with kids because, like, they're gross. Third graders, nasty. They're picking their nose and high-fiving their friend at the same time. Like, so I'm sitting there and I'm questioning. So I'm in hospice. If you've ever been in a hospice care facility, it's really sad. They have, like, the fountains that are supposed to help you not feel anxious and not feel sad, but it's just the same, like, boop, boop, boop. So I hate those things. Didn't help. And they're like, hey, we're going to just play calm piano music. But what we're actually going to do is just take elevator music and just have a piano play that song. So it's awful music. It's not comfortable. And they're, like, trying to be nice to you. So, like, the nurses would come up and be like, can I get you anything? And I'm like, no. And my brother is super savage. And my brother's like, yeah, could my grandpa not die? And they're like, well, we're not really in control, but we're trying to make him feel good in his last days. And my brother goes, it's not really what I was wanting. And I'm like, this is really uncomfortable. I'm like, and all the family are coming by. If you've ever had, like, a grandparent or a family member pass away, you have all the extended family show up that have never been there for that family member, but then they walk in like they've been the day one. So people are coming up to me and they're like, Brogan, do you know how much your grandpa loved you? And I'm like, yeah, more than you did. I've never met you in my life. Like, so it's chaos. It's super stressful. My dad had just gotten a promotion. So my dad is working a lot at his job and trying to balance this. So we get to this point, and my mom comes up to me and she goes, Brogan, we're going to head home. We need to get some sleep. Grandpa, he's what he is, and he wasn't really responsive at this point. It was hard. He actually went into the hospital on Christmas morning. We got up, opened presents as a family, and I had to help my grandfather down the stairs, and I had to help my grandfather with some stuff that a grandchild should never have to help their grandfather with. And he couldn't open his gift. He wasn't strong enough to rip the paper. So that day, like Christmas, that day consisted of an ambulance pulling up and taking my grandfather away, and he never came home. So we skip ahead. It's New Year's Day. My mom comes up and she goes, Brogan, it's been a week. Your dad's exhausted. He needs to get some sleep. We're going to go home. Let us know if something happens. We're only 20 minutes away. And I was like, all right. So everyone's heading home, heading out to either get food or to go sleep or head back to where they live. And And I'm like, I think I'm going to stay. Medical stuff doesn't gross me out. I got in trouble in high school because I was watching a knee surgery video during chapel. And a kid raised his hand and said, Brogan's looking at porn. I was like, false! It's an open knee. They're redoing the ACL. And the teacher goes, somehow that's worse. And I was like, how? This isn't a sin. So I like that's the I don't yeah I know it is. Don't worry about it. So like I wasn't uncomfortable because of the medical stuff, but my mom was like, "Are you sure? Like you want to just sit here and like wait for your grandfather to die?" And I was like, "Well, he was at the hospital in the waiting room when I was born." And I was like, "I feel like it's only fitting that I'm here when he's born again. That I'm here when he meets Jesus for the first time." So I just felt like I needed to stay, and my cousin stayed with me, and I didn't know what to do. I was sitting there, and I was like, there's a part of me that, like, my grandfather, he had 2 forms of cancer. He was deaf in one of his ear, lost half of his teeth. He could barely walk. He had gout in his feet. Like, everything Satan could throw at my grandfather, he threw at him. And I'm sitting there, and it's just me and my cousin and Papa in the room, and I go, what did Papa like? And I was like, Papa liked food, and he liked sports. So I turned the TV on, and I put a baseball game on. And I remember just sitting there, and my cousin and I are talking, and I look over, and my grandfather's not breathing. So I get up, I walk over, and my cousin freaks out, like you do. If someone stops breathing, you react. So she runs out, she's looking for a nurse, she's looking for someone to come help us. And I walk over to my grandfather, and I grab his hand, and I'm like, okay, this is it. I'm going to say goodbye to Papa. Besides parents, he was my hero. My grandfather told me when I was a little boy, when I was 5 or 6 is when I first got called into ministry to be a pastor. And he goes, Brogan, I've always felt like my ministry is to be a pastor's best friend. And every church my grandfather was at, he would meet regularly with the lead pastor and just speak life into him. And my grandfather walked a lot of pastors off a ledge. Not literally, but ocean. And my grandfather, like when I was 11, looked at me and he goes, I'm so glad the last pastor I got to love was my grandson. So I'm standing there in the room, and I'm like, I'm going to say goodbye to Papa. And I grab his hand, and I give him a kiss, and everything in my life froze in that moment. It felt like time paused. And I look, and I'm like, it was this weird moment, and it's not going to really make sense when I say it out loud. But I give him a kiss on the forehead, and I go, that's not him. I go, that's not my grandfather. And you guys, again, this is going to sound weird, but it felt like time froze. And there's this moment where I felt like God physically walked into the room and was standing across the bed from me, looking at me. And he looks at me and he goes, you're in a moment that you can't control. You're in a moment between heaven and earth that you have no power. But every moment in your life leading up to this moment you control. And your calling is to work with people. I'm the one to take home. And it was the first time in my life that I understood my focus of my ministry. It's the first time I understood, like, that's what God's wanting me to do. Is I have the moment, or I have the opportunity with all of you to do everything I can so that the moment you die and you stand face to face looking at Jesus, that it is a celebration and you go home. So that has been what has been driving me for a few years. So this is something, and I think long term, I'm always thinking down the road, way down the road. So we're at last Rush. It was super awesome. And I come out of Rush and I go, okay, God, what's next? I was like, where do you want this to go? Because Heaven Awaits is super dope. Ooh, it awaits. What's next? And I felt like over the last few months, God's been downloading, and through a lot of prayer and reading scripture, he gave me this phrase, kingdom mindset. This is the phrase for our youth group for 2024. Honestly, and I love our seniors, but it's funny that there's only one tonight, which, by the way, Riley, way to go. Day one. Okay. But I know half of them are sick and dying. Not actually dying. That was a bad timing of a joke. Sorry. Sorry. I'll bury that one away. Sorry. I'm sorry. Okay? Sorry. I know. I'm sorry. So, but I think it's kind of cool because the truth is the seniors are only going to get a few months of this. Rest of you, 2024, you're here. And this is our focus for the year. You don't get anything else in 2024 from this youth group, but you learn how to have a kingdom mindset. I'm happy. Seriously. Because like Eustace in that story, your generation's screaming out for a change. Your generation has called out every other generation and said, what you've done doesn't work. Your generation is yelling at the church, saying, what you're doing isn't working. I play that song Clarity, not just because I think it's a cool song, but lyrically, it stuck out to me. One of the lines is, there's hella churches, but hell is working fine. And what's funny, I watched an interview by the rapper. And someone goes, like, you technically, like, hell is, a bad word. Like, you cussed in your song. And he goes, yeah, that song wasn't for you, because the people that need to hear about Jesus aren't going to get offended by a little word. And the interviewee, like, looked at him, and she goes, but you understand, like, you're going to offend people. And he goes, yeah, I'm just living my life like Jesus, and he only offended the religious people that thought they were better than everybody else. And it got silent in the interview. And ironically, they didn't post the interview, and he got hate online. But that line of, there's a lot of churches, and yet hell's still working fine. Which is saying, what the church is doing isn't stopping what hell's trying to do. There's another line that says, the opposite of faith isn't doubt. It's when we think we have it all figured out. Doubting oftentimes strengthens your faith. But when you think you've arrived and you think you've made it, that's a problem. Today at church, if you were at Horizon Sunday morning service, and if you weren't, you missed one, the speaker said, we are made to worship our Creator. So when you say, I'm a self-made person, I did this myself, what you're saying is, I worship me. And he goes, that's going to be real awkward when you stand before the real Creator. So kingdom mindset. We're going to be a youth group that has a kingdom mindset. We're going to be a youth group that approaches things the right way. We're going to be a youth group that doesn't rely on us to fix things, but is going to bring God into a situation to fix it. Because the truth is I'm perfect. I'm very far from it. The truth is Sarah, Jason, Kylea, Anthony, Benny, Quinn, Robin are amazing people. They're here for a reason. None of them are perfect. They are all far from it. And the same with Eustace. You can scratch. The only one that's going to change you back into how I created you to be is me. And that's Jesus. So we're going to break this down. We're going to spend the entire month of January learning what a kingdom mindset is. And then what we're going to do for the entire year of 2024 is we are going to go through the Bible from page 1 to the last page of the book. We're not going to be able to hit every story. I wish we could. but we're going to hit a lot of the big chapter points, and we're going to go through it, including we're going to go all the way up until the story of the upper room. Rush 4, the sermon is called The Upper Room, and it's going to be perfectly aligned. And then the next week is going to be the next story. We're going to have merch that says Kingdom Mindset on it with the crown on it, and we are going to let people know what our focus is. And I'm going to set the ground rules right now. If people get offended because of what we say to them and how we treat them, that's our fault. But if they get offended by our message, then we're probably doing it right. Jesus offended people. Now, I'm not saying to be a jerk. Jesus wasn't a jerk, okay? I don't like when Christians do that, and they're like, now what you need to do is you need to go tell your neighbor where they're wrong. It's like, has that ever worked? Like, hey. Oh, Bill. Hey, just so you know, Dave, you suck. Can I come in? It's like, no. Slam the door in your face. You get punched. If you raised your hand in class and told your teacher, hey, I've been watching you. I think mistakes. I think you're doing some things wrong in your life. That would not work at all. At all. So we're gonna treat people the right way, but we're gonna have the right approach. So some of you have heard me use this phrase, TFA. Some of you are like, oh my gosh, dude, I know. Your thoughts affect your feelings, which affect your actions. Okay? We're gonna break this down. So tonight is kingdom-minded thoughts. Kingdom-minded thoughts. Kingdom-minded thoughts. And my first point is set your mind on things above, or minds is a plural for the group. Colossians 3, 1 through 5. Since then, you have been raised with Christ. Set your heart on things above where Christ is, seated at the right hand of God. Set your minds on things above, not on earthly things. For you died, and your life is now hidden with Christ in God. When Christ, who is your life, appears, then you also will appear with him in glory. Put to death, therefore, whatever belongs to your earthly nature: sexual immorality, impurity, lust, evil desires, greed, which is idolatry. If you need a Bible or you need a notebook, they are in the back on a new cart that we have, or if you need a pen, go ahead and grab one in the back. Can you put point 1 up on the screen, please, real quick? Set your minds on things above. By the way, point 1 is verse 2 in Colossians 3, 1 through 5. So, set your minds on things above. I have to say, this is going to be weird. I like your generation a lot. I like people that tell me what they think. I don't like what your generation does, but I like your generation. But I told the middle schoolers this, and I'm going to tell you. Your generation is under attack. If you study ancient civilization, if you study history at all, anytime an evil ruler wanted to take out a kingdom, you know who they attacked? The children. Why is that, Kyle? There wouldn't be a next generation to take over the kingdom. So then what do you just have to do to defeat that kingdom? Wait until the old generation dies out. If you kill the children, wait for the adults to die, who do you have? Nobody. If you think about when Jesus was born, the wise men approached the king at the time and said, hey, we're looking for the new king, the new Messiah, the one that's going to take over everything. And he goes, huh? They're like, yeah, there's this guy, he's going to be born, he's going to take over everything, he's our savior. And he goes, oh yeah, I think he's over there. And then what did he say? Kill every child under the age of 2. He tried to take out a generation. So let's think about it real quick. Satan's not dumb. I'm not saying he's good. He's not dumb. If he wanted to take out the world, if Satan wanted to stop the world from loving Jesus, from seeing Jesus, who should he attack? Your parents? Your grandparents? He's going to attack you. He's going to attack you. He's going to come after you, and he's not going to attack your actions because your parents still dictate those. He's not going to attack you on what you do because your parents still have control. You have boundaries. You have rules. You can get grounded. You can get put in detention. He knows that's not going to work. He's not going to attack your feelings because if you've ever spoken with a high schooler, those change every second. I've literally had conversations with people that come up to me and they're like, I'm having a really bad day. I'm like, what's going on? While we're talking, their mood switches. And they're like, yeah, and it's just been a great week. I'm like, what happened? And they're like, I just want to say what's up. I'm like, no, you walked up crying and sad. Like, I love small groups because I see you guys, you're just doing this all day. In 2 hours, you'll feel 39 emotions. 8 of them aren't even real. You've made it up. How are you feeling? I feel like mac and cheese. Is mac and cheese a good feeling? No, I'm lactose intolerant. Okay, so that's bad. But I really want it. Okay, well, what does that mean now? I just feel like I don't have friends. But mac and cheese, there's a lot of it there. How does... Okay. Sarah's a lot better at this because Sarah's like, girl, I feel you. With the guys, I'm like, you're so dumb. What does that even mean? What? You feel like mac and cheese? Ew. Shower. Do you smell like mac and cheese? So Satan knows. He's like, if I attack their feelings, they're gonna love me, they're gonna hate me, it's not gonna do anything. So what does he do? He attacks the one thing that only you can control. He attacks the one thing that only you know about. Your mind. And he says, what I'm going to do is I'm going to attack their mind. I'm going to flood their thoughts with things about themselves that aren't true. I had a conversation very recently with somebody who started talking about themselves, and I went, who are you talking about? And they went, me. I was like, no, you're not, because that's not who I know. But you guys do that. We all do that. He throws these thoughts out, and I'm going to clarify real quick. I had a football coach describe thoughts as there's pieces of paper that float in front of you, and it's your responsibility if you're going to grab it and read it, and then put it in your pocket, or if you're going to go, throw it away. I love that. It's not a perfect analogy, but I love that. Because Satan is just putting all these thoughts in front of you. Hitting your identity, hitting the view of yourself, hitting how you treat others, hit all of these different things. Because he's like, I know at some point, I know eventually something's going to grab their attention, they're going to grab it and read it. Now I've got them. Because once I hit their mind, once I start hitting their thoughts, slowly their feelings are going to follow. Your parents don't really love you. Your parents didn't want you. Your parents are bothered by having you in their life. Oh my gosh. You see, my parents don't like me. Now, next time you see your parents, you act different. You feel different about them. This person hates you. Next time you see them at school, your feelings towards them change. After a couple times of seeing them, now your actions towards them change. And now he's got you. All because of this simple idea that he floated out. Satan's attacking your mind. And I know this sounds weird, and this sounds like I'm over-spiritualizing things, but I want you to think real quick about your generation. What has your generation done better than every other generation before? You guys have succeeded and reached heights of anxiety the world didn't know we could hit. Your generation has made depression no longer a mental diagnosis, but a common thing that everybody has. It's a common word. I'm feeling depressed today. Whereas 50 years ago, if you say I'm feeling depressed today, you're at the doctor, and people are worried about you. Now, I'm feeling depressed today. Oh my gosh, no way, let's get Dutch. It's just another day. Another day. I've had people introduce themselves in like small groups. Introduce yourself and describe yourself. I'm Dave. I'm anxious and depressed. And they move on. And I'm like, what? If my friend were to say, I'd be like, let's fix that. No, it's just who I am. No, it's not. That's not who you are. The problem is you've been told that's who you are, and you grabbed that and you held on to it. Your generation has dealt with suicide more than any other generation. Suicide starts right here. And by the way, if you've dealt with anxiety, if you've dealt with depression, if you've struggled with thoughts of suicide, I'm not trying to put shame or guilt on this. But we're going to address this situation head on. Because you know what's not working? Your school counselors. No offense. You need them. You know what's not working? Feel good days. They're not working. If they did, you'd be changing. Your generation would have fixed things by now. Your generation also is the most sexualized generation the world has seen in a long time. Not ever, but the world has seen in a long time. That's because it's in front of you all the time. Everywhere you go, every app you open, it doesn't matter what it is, it's in front of you. Every show, every song. Like, if I'm overstating this, correct me. Okay, that's what I thought. Anything that is not designed the way God designed sex, homosexuality, or heterosexuality, anything that is not a husband and wife having sex is in front of you all the time. I don't know if you guys noticed this, but my parents grew up in a generation where the husbands, on every TV show, husbands didn't want to sleep with their wives, and they said it was gross. But then they would go somewhere, and they would flirt with other women. That is Satan hitting a generation saying sex and marriage is boring. It's gross. I saw a clip the other day. It was from a TV show. This wife goes, hey, can we have sex tonight? And the husband goes, I gave you your 2 kids. I did my job. And I went, first off, he's a jerk. Second off, that's twisted. Because it's not real. Because he's not saying he doesn't want to have sex. He's saying, I don't want to have sex with you. He's saying, I'll find something else to fulfill that part of my need, of my desire. So, I want you to see all of these things are combined. You're the most sexualized generation, and you're not supposed to be dealing with it at your age. Your bodies are designed to be one way, and you're forced to act another way. You're forced to do something else. Why else is anxiety high? Because you're dealing with things you weren't created to deal with. Yeah, that makes sense that anxiety is high. When our bodies, which were designed to be one way, are forced to be another way, there is a reaction. And that addresses why anxiety, depression are real. Because you're having to deal with things you weren't created to deal with. So now that I've laid out the super positive, uplifting part, point 2, this is war. Point 2 is this is war. Ephesians 6:10 through 18. It says, finally, be strong in the Lord and in his mighty power. Put on the full armor of God so that you can take your stand against the devil's schemes. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the ruler day of evil. Stand firm then, with the belt of truth buckled around your waist, with the breastplate of righteousness in place, and with your feet fitted with the readiness that comes from the gospel of peace. In addition to all this, take up the shield of faith, with which you can extinguish all the flaming arrows of the evil one. Take the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God, and pray in the Spirit on all occasions with all kinds of prayers and requests. With this in mind, be alert and always keep on praying for all the Lord's people. This is war. That verse breaks this down. We are in a spiritual battle. This battle is not with people, which is really tough because it seems like people are the one that hurt us. But we need to remember this: we're not fighting people. We are fighting a spiritual battle that is taking place in the heavenly realms. This is serious. And if you've never heard this, if you've never heard this scripture, let me break this down a little bit. The armor of God is not actual physical armor. It'd be cool if it was. I know for a fact, if the armor of God was real, Jason would be wearing all of it. Jason would walk in looking like a knight, ready to fight. It would just be adjusted so it can be on a paintball field. Okay? But the armor of God isn't that. The armor of God, let me go, first one, the belt of truth buckled around your waist. Where do you find truth? Where do you find truth? The Bible. So when it says the belt of truth buckled around your waist, it says you need to know what's real. You need to know what's right and wrong. Next is the breastplate of righteousness in place. Righteousness covering your heart. Your heart protected by righteousness. Your feet fitted. What if you walked with peace? That's what Jesus did. Walking in peace. Walking, not in conflict, but in peace. Take up the shield of faith, with which you can extinguish the flaming arrows of the evil one. You need something to protect yourself. Faith sometimes can be really heavy to hold, but your faith is what protects you. And next is the helmet of salvation. You've got to be saved. And I love that the helmet of salvation covers the mind. Kingdom-minded thoughts. You need Jesus. You need to be saved. And then the sword of the Spirit. Fighting with the Spirit. So I want you to think of how they all work together, okay? And I know we often talk about Jesus as, I don't want to say soft, but he was loving. He was a friend to a lot of people. He was all of that. He's the one that sat down with the woman at the well and loved her and cared for her and saw her for who she really is. But he's also the same guy that one day is going to come back and the sky's going to open up and he's going to come back and wage war on everything that's trying to take you down. And when he does that, it's not going to look pretty if you're not on his side. So when you fight with the sword of the Spirit, you're fighting with your prayers. You're fighting with faith that you can't always see. I love when I see people praying for things that haven't happened yet. This is something that I'm doing with our kids. I'm praying for our twins right now. And I'm not just praying that they'd be healthy. I want that. I'm not just praying that they develop great and that there's no issues. I want that. But I'm right now speaking truth over their life, and I don't even know them. When I pray for them, with Sarah or by myself, I right now am praying for their spouse. I am right now praying for their calling. I'm right now praying that when they are born, that they are setting an example immediately. That when people see these twins, that they're going to go, there's something different there. There's something different with those two. I'm speaking with the sword of the Spirit over their life. But how do you do that? Because again, it's not a physical armor you put on. So I want you with your neighbor real quick. Turn to one or two people. What does it look like to put on the armor of God? Go. a ton of time, but we're going to keep going here. So, this is a challenge for 2024. I want you listening to this. It's time to fight. This is war. It's time to fight. This is a battle for your mind. It's time to fight. Your generation is really good at fighting for other people. You stand up for what's right. You stand up for other people that aren't being treated right. You stand up for your friends at school. You stand up for everybody else, but you don't fight for your own mind. It's time to stand up and fight for you. It's time to stand up and fight for control over your mind. Where would you be in a year from now if you fought for your mind this year? If you fought for your thoughts? If you said, Satan, you don't get to just put anything into my mind anymore. I'm done with that. Satan, oh, that's cute. Bye. My football coach, it's so dumb, but it works. In a game, he'd go, when you're tired and you feel like giving up and that thought comes in front of you and says give up, he goes, I want you to go. And we all looked at him, we're like, Coach, we're not doing that on the field. And he goes, no, I'm serious, Brogan. You lined up a linebacker and you're tired and you're ready to quit and that thought comes in front of you. You're not even good. Why are you out here? I want you to go. And I went, no. A couple weeks later, I'm on the football field. Middle of the third quarter. It's 3-3. It's 35 degrees outside. It's over there. And if you are a Horizon student, you know that what I'm about to say is true. It could be 35 everywhere else in the world. That field is colder. When you are on the turf, that is the pit of coldness. It's freezing. And when that rubber gets cold, it's an ice rink. So I'm out there, I'm freezing cold, and this, I'm not kidding you guys, this thought shows up. Give up. Don't try. Just coast the rest of the game. It's not going to be your fault anyway. And so I'm standing there at linebacker, and I'm blitzing on this play. So I'm trying to get to the quarterback, and I'm lined up, and there's a dude right here in front of me that's going to block me, and I'm like, stop. I'm like, And I'm like, you know what? What have I got to lose? And so I go. The dude thought I was grunting, freaked out. I got a sack on the next play. I'm not kidding you. What he heard is me go over and go, and he freaked out. He's like, dude, what is this guy doing? I walk off the field, and my coach goes, bro, that was incredible. What'd you do? I was like, I blew the thought away. And he goes, yeah, you did. And I was like, why did it work? Why did that work? And he's like, he goes, because no one gets in your mind but Brogan. And I was like, you took it too far. That's weird. But he's like, no one tells you to quit. He goes, except me. I was like, I think you're losing it there, coach. But I've to follow that. When I was single, a girl would walk by. Now I wouldn't go, because she'd be like, yeah, no, blowing the bad thoughts out of my brain. Like, no, that's bad, okay? But I'd be like, I'm not going to hold on to that. A thought of anxiety would come in. Oh, you're not going to do this. I'd be like, nope, I'm not going to hold on to that. When we found out we were pregnant, I had a 3-day stretch of all these thoughts showing up. You're going to be like every other dad. You know, 50% of marriages that have kids end in divorce. All of these thoughts. And I got to the point where instead of just blowing the thoughts away, I started arguing with truth. I started fighting with the sword of the Spirit. And I said, you're right, 50% of marriages that have kids end in divorce. Not mine. You don't get mine. Last week, if you were at church, Pastor Armando showed statistics. Kids that don't have a dad in the home and what happens to them. Every time one of them popped up, I said, not my house. Nope. No one touches my family but me. And then I told myself, and no one touches me either. Satan, you don't get my family, and you don't get me. You don't get me, and you don't get my family. It's time to fight. It's time to stand up for yourself. Because I had this thought, when you stand before God one day, you know who he's not going to ask you about? Everybody else. He's going to ask you about you. So you can stand before him and go, hey, I fought for my friend that was struggling. And he goes, great, thank you. Yeah, we're supposed to fight for those that can't fight for themselves. But you were struggling with thoughts and you were struggling with lust for a long time. How was your fight with that? Oh, I gave up on myself a long time ago. I'm a lost cause. But I fought for my friend. And he's going to go, yeah, I'll deal with your friend when I talk to your friend. But I'm talking about you. I had this idea as I was finishing this message. Why would you put your eternity in someone else's hands? Why would you put your eternal soul in someone else's hands? You wouldn't, right? You don't put your job in someone else's hands. It's not like when you graduate college and you go, okay, buddy, what do you want me to do? You're like, no, I'm going to decide for myself. Well, same with this. It's time to put your eternity into your own hands. Point 3, who are you fighting? Point 3, who are you fighting? 1 Peter 5, 8 through 9 says, be alert and of sober mind. Sober mind. What does sober mean? You're not drunk. What happens when you're drunk? I hope none of you know. It's okay if you do. You make bad decisions. Your decision-making ability is clouded and is affected. You can't think clearly. The song I played at the beginning of the message is called Clarity. You don't have that when you're drunk. So, when it says of sober mind, of a clear mind, of a mind that you have the ability to think clearly, to make decisions. Your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour. He doesn't say he walks around looking for a bite. Devour is complete destruction. Destroying something. You. There is a lion walking around looking to devour you. Resist him standing firm in the faith because you know that the family of believers throughout the world is undergoing the same kind of sufferings. So you need to know that this fight is what people are fighting all around the world. There's a lion out to get you. And again, I know it sounds weird. There's not a physical lion. Satan's out to get you, and he's real. He's coming for your mind. He's coming for your generation. He knows. He knows if he gets your generation, the church can die. But what freaks him out is he's also seen what your generation can do. He has seen your generation do things for God that most other generations weren't doing. He has seen you reach people that are considered unreached. He has seen you witness to your friends that want nothing to do with God. He has seen you fight things that your parents didn't have to fight. He has seen the fruit of you following the Lord, and it freaks him out. Because he knows if you guys catch a hold of Jesus and you run with it, he's done. So point 4, remove the temptation that is right in front of you. It's time to fight for your mind. It's time to step up. It's time to take this serious. I know this sounds serious, and I know I'm being dramatic, because it is. Because this is not about making friends. This is not about popularity. This is not about finding the person to be in a relationship with. This is about your eternal soul. This is about what's going to happen in that moment, the moment that my grandfather met Jesus. There is no fear. There is no regret. There is no guilt. There is no shame. My grandfather passed away in peace because he knew, I'm going to wake up and I'm going to be home. When you get to that moment, how are you going to be? So this means making decisions that are tough. Removing the temptation that is right in front of you. Who are you following? If you have social media, any social media app, any platform, and if you follow somebody that when you see them or you read what they have to say, if it affects your thoughts, unfollow them. Stop looking at them. This means, who are you talking to? And this is going to challenge some of your faith a little bit. If you have a friend that every time you're around them causes your mind to change, stop being around them. What music are you listening to? If you're listening to music that every time you listen to it, it changes the way you think, stop listening to it. If you're watching movies, and every time you watch that movie, I don't care what it is, it affects your mind negatively, stop watching it. The question I ask myself, is this worth me losing my soul over? I need to stop being around that friend. They're going to get mad at me. Okay, so what you're saying is you would rather be friends with that person than take responsibility for your own soul. And then when you stand before God, see how that answer goes. And guys, I know this sounds harsh, and please know my heart, I'm not trying to come at you. But often we think we're the exception and we can handle it. And if you were handling it so well, why are you struggling? If you're doing so good at balancing it, then why are you coming up to me, talking to me about it, going, I'm having a problem? If you're doing so good and if you're doing everything right, why is your anxiety skyrocketing? If you're doing well, why are you struggling? So it's time to fight for yourself. Week 1, fight for yourself. Week 1, fight for yourself. Tell yourself, no one controls my mind but me. Satan, you don't get to come in here. Satan, you don't get to make decisions in here. Satan, you don't get to speak those lies. You know, the belt of truth, when you argue with Satan and throw scripture at him, you know what he does? He runs. One of the best stories in the Bible is when Satan tempts Jesus. Jesus doesn't go, you know I'm the Son of God. You know I'm Jesus. He throws scripture at him. Thou shalt not tempt the Lord your God. Satan left. Throw scripture at him. Satan's like, hey, no, this isn't true. They say this. Nope, it's not true. I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. If God wanted me to be like them, I'd have been them, but I'm not. I'm me. Obviously, God wants me to do something. We haven't talked about this yet. We're going to at some point, but when Sarah and I found out we were pregnant, for the next 6 weeks, we felt off about the whole thing. We did not feel right about it. Something felt really off. We were nervous. We were freaking out. The moment we found out we were having twins, we had a sudden urge of peace, and everything made sense. We were off for 6 weeks because we didn't have what God gave us. We kept going, God gave us a kid, and he goes, no, I didn't. There's another one. Oh, we're going to be a family of 3. And he goes, ooh, your math's wrong. 4. And then he goes, well, Brogan's always been bad at math, so that makes sense. It's time to fight for you. It's your mind. It starts there. I want you to take 1 minute, and then the host will come up, and they're going to close this out. What do you need to fight? Where do you need to fight? Who do you need to fight? What do you need to fight? What is it? You all know what it is. Write it down. Time to make changes. Take this next week. Try it. Take this next week. Change the music you listen to. Change the movies you watch. If there's a certain time of day that if you're on your phone and you're alone in the house, you're going to look at porn, change that. This week. Change it. If it means throwing your phone in the garbage, I'd rather see you in heaven without a phone. If you have a friend that every time you're around them brings you down, stop being around them. You don't deserve to be treated like that. If you're in a relationship and every time you're around them, boundaries are being broken, you're doing things you not want to do, there's a quick fix. Bye. It's time to fight for yourself. I want you to take a minute. If you have a notebook, phone, I want you to write things down. I want you to write down, what do you need to fight for?